and Ramus. Those of you old enough will get that reference.
You've got to be probably in your 50s or older to get it.
No, 30,
About
mid-40s.
43 is the cutoff on that one.
Roughly 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And like shoes. Anybody that doesn't like shoes won't know.
Right.
Again, thank you all for coming. This is the District J candidate forum put on by the Southwest Democrats. I'm Adrian Ozuna. I'm the current president of the club. I would like to welcome you all to Bayline Community Center. And again, we appreciate y'all coming out. The weather was much better earlier, even with the tropical storm. And then it feels very much like an Allison type situation.
Never
For
gonna
those in
end.
2001 who remember that one. We are very happy to have five Democratic candidates for District J here tonight. I did some numbers earlier today. District J is about 70% Democratic in turnout in 16 and 18. And that goes all the way down ballot. It's not just top line. We're talking JP at the bottom. So if you want to make an impression, and again, this is being Facebook Live, Democratic voters are the majority of what makes up District J. So again, thank y'all for coming. Over the course of doing a number of these forums, what we've done normally is ask subject matter experts to actually moderate these panels. We've had Sherry Matula do our education panels, Juliet Stepetch do education panel. We had Chris Banks do our LGBT panel, Tara Taylor do our cannabis reform panel, and we are very happy to have Charles Kuffner do our moderating for this evening. He is the curator of Off the Cuff blog, which has a ton of progressive information there. He was born and raised in New York, but he got to Texas as fast as he could. Where he enrolled in Trinity University in 1984, where he graduated with a degree in math, science. And then he came to Houston, where he was briefly a graduate student at Rice. Since then, he's worked in the IT industry, where he's currently a BlackBerry administrator.
That part of it is old.
Okay, I was wondering. So, but he currently resides in the Heights with his wife and two daughters. Please give a warm welcome to Charles Kuffner.
Yeah, it's other parts of IT now. BlackBerry, sadly, is no longer with us. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to the candidates. I'm going to start in just a minute by asking each candidate to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go through a couple of quick hit introductory questions, and then we're going to get into the more substantive part of it. So with that in mind, each candidate, first of all, who is my timer for this? Okay, so each question you will have a minute to answer. So please let them know when they're starting to run out of time. Yes?
They've got 90 seconds for their intro.
Okay, we'll give them 90 seconds for the intro.
For the rapid fire questions, they've got 30 seconds.
I don't think anyone's going to run out of time on those.
Okay. And then for the extended questions, then they have 1 minute. And I'll do the green at 30, the yellow at 45, and the red at 55. And you've got 5 seconds to wrap up before I start.
Yep. All right. So with all that in mind, let me ask each, and I will, as I ask each question, I will pick who is answering. We're going to randomize the order so that it's not the same people answering the same in the same order. I don't want one person always going first and one person always going last. So we're going to bounce around. But for these purposes, we will start with Nelvin Adriatico to please take 90 seconds and introduce yourself.
It's my turn. Good evening, everybody, and glad you guys can make it today. I know the flood is outside; it's kind of difficult right now there. So, anyway, my name is Nelvin Adriatico, and I'm running to be your next city council for District J. You know, I was raised by a single mom. She was a teacher. She was the one that told me that if you want change, You gotta be part of that change. Because you cannot complain to the system if you're not doing anything to change the system. That's why ever since, I've actually joined so many organizations since I was a kid, high school, college, because I want to be part of that change. I am a first generation immigrant. I came here with $20, and I was able to achieve the American dream. I have believed in the American dream. And that is why I am here in front of you today, trying to empower the people and to help them. Because this district is 68% Hispanic, 30% Asian American, and a lot of them, more than 80%, immigrants and refugees. And I want to be, and I want to represent that community, because who would be the best representative for them but an immigrant myself? So this election is so crucial, it's so important, it's so personal to me. I want to be your city council for District J because I am a business leader and a community advocate that has done so much for this community for the past 15 years. So I'm asking you, hopefully I will get your support, and I'm asking you to support and vote for me this coming election because I want to be your next city council for District J. Thank you.
Thank you. Freddie Cuellar, please.
Oh, I didn't know I was there. I was going random order. All right.
It will be random, but the first time I'm going to be more
Okay,
orthodox.
got you. I got. Okay. Okay. Well, anyways, my name is Freddie Cuellar. I'm running for City Council District J. I'm not a politician. I always tell people that I'm someone who decided to run for office. My background is a little different than most politicians. I was actually born to two parents who did not have high school educations, and I was born to an immigrant grandmother. And naturally, like any kid who was brought up in the inner city, I got involved doing things that I wasn't supposed to. I'll leave it at that. Until one day I came home, my father, he put me out. And he said, son, you have a brother, you have a sister, and sometimes you got to cut off the arm to save the body. And this is what I'm doing today. And I knew it hurt my father for him to put me out, but he had to do what he had to do. So I went to go live out on my own, started living with my friends for a while, until one day I realized that I was going down the wrong path. And I called my dad, and I said, Dad, I need to come home. I need somewhere to stay. And he said, well, you could come home. We'll have a discussion. And I thought as a young man that he's going to take me with open arms. He did not. He said, you have 30 days to get your life together. If you can't get it together, whatever happens to you, happens to you. So I came home in those 30 days, and I decided to join the military. And I always tell people the military saved my life because when I came home, one of my friends had been murdered, and multiple others were incarcerated. And I really came home to no friends and basically a new life. So after coming home from the military, I became involved in labor unions. And in my late 20s, I actually became one of the youngest labor union presidents in the country. So after watching, politicians for the longest come into our halls, take our money, take our endorsements, take our boots on the ground, and turn their backs on us later, we need to change. And then after representing federal workers during the longest government shutdown in history, we need to change. So now I'm here because I'm running for District J because I understand the people, because I understand this election is not about me, it's about we. And together we will change this district. So vote Freddie Cuellar for City Council District J.
Thank you. All right. Rafael Galvan.
Well, to all, good evening, and thank you for coming out in this bad weather. And I also want to thank the Southwest Democrats for setting up this forum. This is actually my first forum, so if my voice goes up in octave, please bear with me. I'm a little nervous. My name is Rafael Galvan. I have lived in District J for the past 29 years of my existence, and I have loved every moment of it. Residing in Sharpstown has given me the fortune of knowing what it truly means to be culturally diverse. I live right smack in the middle of a vibrant community where you hit one street, you're in Chinatown, you hit the next street, it's like Little Mexico, and I absolutely love it. I myself really don't have an inspirational story of growing up with dealing with violence or living under the poverty line. My parents immigrated here to Houston in the mid-'80s, and through their hard work, perseverance, and through some progressive immigration reform with those administrations, they were able to achieve citizenship. with that and that same hard work and sacrifice, they were able to give my sister and I things that they could only dream of. I pride myself in being a product of the American dream, and I want to continue giving this opportunity to the people, and I hope that on November 5th you can come and vote for me so that we can keep that going. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Patterson.
I'll stand up like everybody else has. Excuse me. My name is Andrew Patterson. I'm running for District J simply because I feel I'm the best qualified candidate. And I make the statement simply because my job experience, every day that I got up and worked, I'm helping people that are actually hurt. I worked in the insurance industry. So getting up, talking to people, saying, what can I do to help you make your life better? And I would do it, I have to follow the law. If I didn't, I'd get myself in trouble. I did it for many, many years. I've been a risk manager. So background, as I went to Eastern Illinois University in Illinois, Charleston, Illinois. I grew up in Texas, suburban Laredo, and I learned quite a bit there. Had some good experiences, some bad experiences. Remember being shot across the border, Rio Grande one time, going down there, and the guys across were shooting 22s at us. They do that all the time anyway. But we didn't get hit, thank God. But since I've been back in Houston, back in the '79, I've seen Houston go through a lot of changes. Some have been good, some have been bad. I've taken opportunities to go out and approach council, whether it's at the Harris County Democratic Commissioners Court, City Council, raise issues that affect our lives, and hopefully being able to make changes or ideas into their thoughts, so to realize that we are all facing here, we're not alone. So District J, I want to represent you and do what I can for you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sandra Rodriguez.
Well, good evening, everyone, y buenas noches. Assalamu alaikum. Salam. So it's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I want to thank the Southwest Democrats for organizing this event. I know it's a lot of work, and we really do appreciate it to make sure that we let the residents know who the candidates are. My name is Sandra Rodriguez, and I'm one of your candidates for Houston City Council District J. I'm a lifelong resident of Southwest Houston. I have lived in the district for 34 years. I went to J. Long and Cunningham and graduated from Robert E. Lee High School. And for the last 20 years, I've been in public service. Once I graduated Lee High School, I started working for the mayor's anti-gang office because in my middle school years, the area was heavily infested with the gangs, and the activity was really bad. And so that really encouraged me to join the mayor's anti-gang office to begin addressing some of the public safety issues. Now I work for the city health department. I was overseeing the Southwest and Hiram Clark Multi-Service Center, been there for over 12 years. And I also serve as the president for the Gulfton Super Neighborhood Council. So if we want to make some change, we start at home. Gulfton has been my home, and it still is my home. I live there, work there, worship, play, everything. And so I have two boys, a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. One is a freshman at U of H, and the other one is sophomore at Lamar. So the work that I've been doing for the last 20 years at the grassroots level has really motivated me to serve at another level. And so for this time around, I ask for your support to serve as your next city councilwoman for District J. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to encourage y'all to stay seated for your answers going forward, just because I'm afraid someone's going to trip standing up. There's not a lot of room back there.
Someone dropped their keys in the middle right here. I don't know who they are.
Someone dropped their keys in the middle of the aisle here. If someone checked your pockets. So thank you for pointing that out. All right, a couple of short answer questions here. Just to situate ourselves in the district and tell us a little bit more about yourself. I'm going to ask you a few things about the district. What is your favorite place in the district to eat lunch? Sandra.
Well, I have many, so we
Name
can start.
one.
We're going to say Bijan
All
on
right.
Hillcrest.
All right. Drew, favorite place to eat lunch? The questions are going to get harder as we go on.
I'm just thinking to myself, I just had lunch at a meal today, which is on Hillcroft. I also eat like Indian food, Mexican food. God, there's so much choices here in District J. So,
all right.
I'm with you on that.
Rafael, favorite place to eat lunch?
Yeah, that is a tough question, but me Tacos La Bala all the way on here on Bel Air. So, yeah.
All right. Freddie.
LA Fisherman. If you ain't been there, then you don't know nothing about seafood. Thank you.
All right. And Nelvin.
Monos, Colombian restaurant. You have to support my tenant, and fund it.
Very good. All right. What is your favorite place to get Tex-Mex or Mexican food? Rafael.
That's a hard one because my parents own a Tex-Mex
Restaurant, so feel free to show for your
I
parents'
will say
restaurant.
Filthy One Night.
If it's in District J.
That's
It has to be in District J.
It's hard because I can't eat anywhere other Tex-Mex restaurant, but like I said, maybe Don Ray.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
All right. Nelvin.
Don Carlos, because I did back my Dapper Mom events there.
Okay. Sandra.
Don Carlos.
Oh. It's okay if more than one of you likes it. Drew.
I'm stuck, quite frankly, because I usually eat Mexican. I don't eat Tex-Mex per se, but they mentioned some places here, so I have to choose one of theirs.
And Freddie.
Hey, honestly, when you're campaigning, any random food truck I'm going to. Thank you. I'll let that be known as a random food truck.
All right. What is your favorite place in the district to get Asian food? Asian of any variety. Freddie.
Oh man, I really don't have too much Asian food. If I'm I'd be lying, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna lie.
Drew.
It would be the House of Bowls on Corcoran Drive. It's Hong Kong style, which is a bit Chinese and American influence.
Okay. Nelvin.
I have to support my people. Jerry's Grill.
Rafael.
That would have to be Tapioca House on Bel Air.
Okay. Sandra.
Tan Restaurant.
Yes.
All right. Last question of this sort. Where would be the best place in District J, your favorite place in District J, to go for a fancy dinner? Drew.
How fancy is fancy?
You're taking your spouse, someone you want to impress, your boss, your mother, however you want to define it. But, sit down, tip nicely, that kind of place.
I am really quite sorry.
I can't think of the restaurant that's on 59 between Bel Air and Hillcroft with the Peking duck. What's the name of it? That's my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nelvin.
Cafe 101, Love Boat.
All right. Freddie.
No, man. Honestly, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I go to LA Fisherman all the time. They know me by name, face, and it's pretty expensive too, so yeah.
All right. And Rafael.
Again, it's tough, man. You have a restaurant, you go eat at your restaurant. You can even set up a personal candlelight dinner there. So, I mean, it's hard, but yeah. I like Sawgrass. It's a pretty nice thing, so I'll go to Sawgrass right there on 59.
All right. So now moving on to our 1-minute answer topics. So I think in honor of the weather this evening, let's talk about flooding. We're 2 years out from Hurricane Harvey. Please give me your assessment of the city's response to Harvey and what the priorities need to be going forward from here. Sandra.
I think we have a lot of work to do in regards to flooding and our response, or the city's response to flooding. We need to work with Harris County, city, and all these other organizations to make sure that we are targeting and in the communities that are impacted severely, certain specific neighborhoods, that vulnerable communities, to make sure that we reach out to the nonprofits and the organizations that have these relationships to reach that community, to provide the information in the language needed in Spanish, Arabic, and others. So that's why it's so important to work with all these other organizations. Yes.
Okay. Drew.
The flooding program itself, as to how the city of Houston responds, could be better because we need to integrate our services, both the county, state, and federal. When they refuse to take care of us after the flooding has occurred, that's what we heard. Things don't get done. Houses haven't been taken care of. People don't get taken care of. As far as the city goes, I have to admit that throughout the years, what they have done, and I'm glad they've done it, is there used to be some really low underpasses that used to be people with rain, not necessarily have to be a flood. These things would flood, people would drive through them, go right to the bottom, and you wouldn't see them until after the water resided. And that happened repeatedly here in Houston. So I'm glad that the city is doing something in that regard. We also have to do better in regards to the drainage aspect, but that's not on the flooding. That has to be a plan to be put into effect.
Okay, Rafael?
I think when you're dealing with a catastrophe like Hurricane Harvey, the city did the best it could. There's always things that we could make better. Obviously, one of the biggest topics is the drainage fee that we all get charged. Making sure that we're holding these people accountable, that they're using that money for what it's for. And also, as Sandra pointed out, talking to county, because they're the ones who are also responsible for a lot of the flooding issues. And a big point that Mr. Patterson just made, I mean, integrating everything together between the city, the state, and even at the federal level, with money that they were also sending in that hasn't been dispersed to the people that needed it, with the special programs that were supposedly supposed to help these people during Harvey, and only finding out now that only 4 homes were fixed with that money that was given. That is just disappointing, and we need to fix that. And as councilman, that's one of the biggest things that I'm running on, is accountability. And moving forward, I hope that's how it works.
Okay, Freddie?
I think the city should focus more on lobbying Congress for the necessary funds to restore the attics and the reservoirs. We also have to ensure that we aren't building in floodplains and protecting our critical marshes, bios and flood-prone areas. We can also work on restoring the damage our constant buildings that has caused, and better manage our drainage controls, yes, through planning and cleaning our clogged pipes.
And Nelvin?
You know what? First, we must acknowledge that climate change is real. And climate change is threatening to a high and extreme degree. Unless we actually acknowledge that, no matter what we do, when it's going to be a problem, we're going to keep flooding. Right? And then second, we also, you know, Harvey has damaged so many millions of properties from businesses. We are one affected by it as well. So in order to address it, the city needs to have an aggressive approach how we can actually expand our green spaces. We should not be, as like what Freddie said, we should not be building houses in the low places. We shouldn't be developing houses there, because safety is the first thing that we need to do with our people. That's our role as a city official. We need to make sure that everybody's safe and secure. Green spaces is one of them. We need to make sure that we improve and help all the parks that we have in this district, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as it happens, we're all thinking about flooding now, but only 8 years ago, the city was in the middle of the worst drought it had seen in decades, which led to a whole different set of problems. So, what is your assessment of the city's ability to deal with drought, which, you know, as one of you rightly noted, is also a side effect of climate change? So we'll start with Rafael this time.
That was one of the real questions that I really had to research thoroughly. I didn't even know we had a drought in 2011, which maybe it makes sense at that age. I really wasn't worried about that kind of stuff, but reading what the city has done through the public works and the DWO and the county, all the work that they've really done is paying off. Houston actually owns 70% of the stakes in Lake Livingston, 100% in Lake Houston, and 70% of Lake Conroe. And through everything that they've done so far, they're predicting that they have enough water at its current capacity to keep us well until 2050. So I honestly think for now we will be fine. We really won't experience any drought issues.
Okay, Freddie.
As far as like what you said, I didn't even know we had a drought in the city of Houston. That's news to me. I'm a pretty young guy. But one thing I think, like he said, the city does have a backup plan as far as like if we go through a drought as far as water, we should be fine moving forward. And can you repeat the question? Because I was halfway listening.
The question was, you know,
just to be honest,
you know, what should the city be doing, you know, given the realities of climate change and that we've experienced drought before? What's your assessment of the city's position, and what should its priorities be?
I would think the city would have to create a better budget around those things as far as the reservoir, as far as drought, and anything like that. But other than that, I couldn't give you any further thoughts on it.
Drew.
A big one?
You're up.
Well, itself on drought, we can take a variety of different approaches. We can require that when people are putting in the lawn, that they have specific trees, shrubs, or grass that are tolerant to the area, so they can withhold and they don't turn brown on us and they withhold water. We could take soaking hoses, specific times to actually water the plants, which people have done. You can do it like in the morning, early in the morning, or late in the evening, as some other places have. Some places in California have gone drastic, suggesting that people, what they call gray water, it means you don't flush the toilet if you take a pee, and you have several people take a pee in the toilet, then you flush it. That was California. They went so drastic as to do that, and they went hog wild as far as I was concerned. But yeah, so we can do something, we can anticipate it as a help all along to do that, and make people conscious of it, be conservative.
Okay, Sandra?
We need to look at how to conserve water, utilizing our city buildings or other facilities to collect rainwater in the event that we do have a drought. We need to look at the plants that we plant, on the highways, near the highways, in the esplanade, making sure that we plant plants that don't need that much watering or maintenance. We also need to look at pushing for laws that control and clean pollution. I would be willing to go to Austin and advocate for that and push for that for the city.
Okay, and Nelvin.
Well, the city really needs to be more aggressive when it comes to drought, and what we're going to be doing to promote green building in the city. Drought is not just a problem with the government or the city; it's a problem for all of us. So we need to make sure that we can contribute something. How we do that? Conserve water. Don't plant use your sprinkler system during the day. You can do your sprinkler in the evening. That will conserve water. Reuse water when you're planting or when you're watering your plants. Do urban tree canopy. Rainwater harvesting is another thing. It's free. We always rain in Houston. So might as well just get a lot of kegs and just conserve the water. I mean, there's a bunch of ways. And I will make sure that when I win at the city, I will try to make sure that I will allocate a certain funds and give incentives to the people that's going to be helping us to make sure that all these policies and procedures that we have will take place.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple of questions that, at a broader level are really federal in nature, but both have a strong local component as well. So for the next two questions, I want you to answer them in terms of what can be done at the local level, okay? So the first question has to do with gun violence, which has very much been in the news lately. Obviously, the city is limited in what it can do in terms of passing laws, because the state has largely limited that. So from the perspective of city council, city government, what can the city do, and what will you advocate for to help reduce gun violence? Freddie.
I would think the first thing we would have to look at in District J, because I've actually canvassed the whole district, is that we'd have to have better policing out there. Because currently, police officers do not have relationships with people who live in District J. It's just not there. Especially people of color who are afraid of police officers, which I've been told. And you have to understand, District J is it's a big area of undocumented citizens who are already afraid to report crimes. So if anything, I think we'd have to create a better avenue between undocumented citizens and our police force to create that relationship moving forward. And as far as gun violence, where I grew up, it was always self-policing that we did a lot growing up. And you would have to, my only response to that, you need better policing, period. Not these security groups, but better policing. Thank you.
Okay, Nelvin.
I actually responded to this question on Facebook, and I got a lot of heat, right? Because what would you do to really minimize violence, and especially gun violence in the city? And I always just say, I actually have different items that I put in. Number one is really the education part aspect of it. We need to make sure that it's just the hate itself because of the differences in our opinions, right? We need to make sure that we all are a united city. And then second, games. it's really impacting a lot of people, it's a lot of kids, because we are not stricter in the games that people are watching, the kids are watching right now. Number 3 is that all the stricter laws and people buying guns on the trade shows. I mean, we have to make sure that we have a stricter law when it comes to getting people that's showing IDs. We have to make sure that we have a better ways in scouting and making sure that the approval and the people that are trying to get these guns actually are going to be used for this and not for killing people.
All right, Drew.
And a friend of mine, she's well, not my age, but her father was a marksman for the U.S. military. It was handgun. And one thing she told me that he did was that she was a child. He took a bottle of red dye or whatever it was, put it out there, had her shoot it, and the thing exploded, red all over the place, and it made an impression on her, as people do. What I would like to see, quite frankly, is if somebody's out there who has been involved with gun violence or whatever it is, take that person, take him down to the morgue. Say, this is a body right here that's been through shot, and this is what it looks like. This is a human being. Make it personal to them so they realize that they should never pick up a gun and point it at somebody. That is a person. That's not an object or inanimate, and that they're going to be responsible for whatever happens.
Okay, Sandra.
I think we should have universal background checks. We cannot make it as easily accessible. Guns cannot be easily accessible for people. You know, I live in Gulfton. I hear the gunshots at night. I hear when the kids, you know, maybe it's across the street, a 14, 15-year-old has been shot. This is a reality, unfortunately, in District J and in our city. So we need to make sure that we have universal background checks. I know that the city put a committee together of members who are against guns and pro-guns. And so they have some recommendations that I'm going to review to make sure that we implement some of those.
Okay, and Rafael.
Curbing gun violence, absolutely, it's a tough topic. Again, like I said, I've never really been through any violent situation myself. I am a bit of a gun advocate. I do hold a license to carry, but I hold it for safety reasons, just to protect myself in any case. I will highly disagree with Mr. Nelvin that it comes from video games. I mean, as humans, we've been predisposed to violence since the beginning of time. One of the biggest things that I feel that we need to do is come together as a community, hold more community events, know your neighbor. I mean, go out, talk to people. When you have more social interaction, these kind of thoughts seem to go away from you. You tend to want to talk to more people, interact, and these violent thoughts will disappear. If anything, like I said, holding community events, talking about it, we should be able to do something big with that.
Okay, so the next issue that is not strictly a local issue, but which I think deserves some local perspective, is immigration. We all know the terrible things that the Trump administration has been doing with the immigrant populations. We also know about the state and its show me your papers law. So my question is, from a local perspective, as a city council member, what can you do, what will you do to help improve the lives of our immigrants here in Houston? Drew.
Well, at the federal level, we have Trump, who's been complaining about the census being taken. And quite frankly, what he's trying to do is prevent the immigrants from being able to take the census, because that affects terms of $675 billion being dispersed to the state, cities, and so forth. So if you limit the amount of immigrants who actually complete the census completely and appropriately, that's an effect that's going to affect us directly. It's going to affect them because you're not going to get the proper housing or things that we need to do by federal government. So the aspect of immigration itself, Americans have a long history. You know, you ever heard of the term WAP, which is an Italian term? It's a derogatory term. What does it stand for? Without papers. And that's what it stood for. And they used to sit there and say, oh, he's a WAP because he doesn't have any papers, he's illegal. But, you know, people get accepted over a period of time. The same thing will happen with our immigrants, but in the process, how rough do we have to make it for them? We're Americans.
Sandra.
So I'm a daughter of immigrant parents, so I'm first generation. And I know firsthand with, you know, just my parents and then doing the work that I've done the last 20 years, the fears in our community, our communities are paralyzed by fear. And so in the last few years, I've implemented neighborhood conversations where we bring apartment management and owners, law enforcement, and the residents into a safe environment where we can have those critical conversations. So first we need to start building bridges by building good relationships with law enforcement and with our government. I don't think our communities get to see our elected officials, especially the immigrant community. And so I want to make sure that I provide services in the different languages and that I am embedded in the community where they are, that I meet our communities where they are, in the apartment complexes, in the different organizations that they participate in. And so, number one, we need to build relationships first before we can do anything else, because that will impact crime, housing, and everything else.
No.
First, I would like to encourage you all to please vote for 2020 and take Trump out of the office. Because at the end of the day, this immigration is so important for all of us. I am sick and tired of seeing and getting families being separated with their kids. It's not right. It's morally wrong. So that's the only way that we're going to be able to tackle the immigration, because no matter what we do in our local government, if the federal government is actually implementing and executing this law, it's difficult for us to support our community. This community is 80% immigrants. A lot of documented and undocumented live in this country. I am sick and tired of seeing people live in chaos, in fear. Schools. One of my volunteers just got arrested by ICE. And we're fighting for it right now. So if you don't vote for 2020 and get Democrats in office, then we're going to have a problem again. And I don't want any 4 years of immigrants issue again. Thank you.
Freddie.
Oh man, this is something I'm very passionate about this. You know that, and this is a conversation me and you've had multiple times over this campaign. Even though we're running against each other, we talk about immigrants all the time. And I've stated since the beginning, whether undocumented or documented, I'm going to represent you. And I think back, you asked, what was the question again, Mr. Charles?
How can you help improve the lives of our immigrants as a member of City Council?
Okay. Well, the first thing you would have to do is, I would create an immigration defense fund to basically give them rights to citizenship, because knowledge is power. If you give people the knowledge, they'll get there. So for as like when they had the ICE raids, I actually went around every apartment complex in the district and handed out literature to undocumented citizens of their rights if it happens, because that's what it's about. It's about changing this community. Because I've stated from the beginning, it's not about me, it's about we. And together I'll represent everybody, because everybody matters. Nobody should be afraid of an ICE raid or being deported. Or I should not have to run into a little boy who was orphaned because both his parents were deported. That has to stop here, and it'll stop with me once I'm elected to City Council. Thank you.
And Rafael.
Being the son of immigrants, at the federal level, just as I mentioned in my intro, I mean, my parents were given citizenship through progressive immigration reform, and that's what we need to do again. At the federal level, just as Mr. Nelvin passionately said, we have to come out and vote. If we don't do that, nothing will happen. And then I also want to thank Freddie for doing that kind of stuff, going to the apartments and giving these people the information that they need so that they don't have to be afraid to go to work. As I mentioned before, my parents' restaurant, I mean, we see a lot of the community there, and they're afraid to even come out and eat because they're afraid that ICE is going to come out and then they're going to grab them while they're having dinner. And this is just ridiculous. As a constituent and everybody else, like I said, you have to come out and vote, but here at our local level, when they see a familiar face, they feel more comfortable coming to you and talking to you, and that's what I plan to do, to come out, have them feel comfortable, and keep living better lives.
Thank you. Next year will be the every 10-year census will be going on. The state, in its wisdom, did not appropriate any money to help do a complete count. So the city of Houston, which does have some money appropriated and a plan in place will be on its own. So obviously the harder to count populations are among the immigrants and people of color. So what will you do as a council member to help ensure that Houston has a complete census count? We'll start with Nelvin.
First, all of us running for office should be advocating and talking about census. And I've been doing that every apartment that I go to. I even created a slogan. My slogan is that don't be haunted, be counted. And that's what I always say to people, every person that I meet. Because you know what? In my social media, you will see it there. Don't be haunted, be counted, right? Because every person living and breathing, even babies, I see myself, I see you all as $1,596 per person. And that's what we're missing. That's what we cost. So if we don't count the people that's living in this district, we're going to be missing a lot. We're going to be missing a lot for roads, salaries for teachers, everything that's allocated for this community. I've looked at the ratio on the community. There's only 13% in this district that has sent their census report. It's not right. We have to be counted. Don't be haunted, be counted.
Rafael.
Hey, Devin. That's a pretty tough act to follow. But as city councilman, I mean, these shoes are meant for walking. So I'm going to be out there knocking on every door myself, volunteer, have my staff volunteer, have other people from the community volunteer, so that they feel comfortable. When somebody knocks on your door, you're not scared to answer, because that's the biggest deal. People are just not wanting to answer the door because they're scared. And they're scared because they don't see a familiar face or somebody that they're comfortable with. So if I am voted your next city councilman for District J, that's what I'm going to do. Get out there, walk, and get these people counted.
Thank you. Freddie.
Yes, I would. Is this mic on?
Yeah.
It's on. That's on. I would work with our super neighborhoods and our management districts to make sure everyone's counted correctly. And the one thing I would say was like what you said, Rafael, is that I would actually go out there aggressively and talk to each individual person who lives in our district to make sure they're part of the census. Because I think that's what it takes, and I believe what you said too. A lot of people are actually afraid to fill out the census. It's not that they don't want to and they don't want to be counted. They actually have the fear of it. So I would definitely go out. There goes the mic going in now. But I would definitely go myself out there to ensure that everyone's counted on the census.
Okay. Sandra.
First, we need to change our language, and instead of saying harder to count, we want to say undercounted. This is the immigrant community, LGBTQ, and renters, our minority community. City Council approved this on $650,000 to go towards outreach. And the Houston Endowment also provided funding for the creation of Houston in Action. Houston in Action is an organization that brings in city, county, and other nonprofits who are working in the community. So they're working on planning their strategic plan to outreach into the communities. So my role as the city councilwoman would be to connect them to those organizations and agencies and apartment complexes and everyone that is already doing the work in my district to make sure that they don't undercount or miss anyone in the district.
Drew. Can you still hear me through this? Yes, Drew.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little deaf. Actually, let me give you a little information that you may or may not know. The Census Bureau, or the census count, is actually under Commerce. You say, what does Commerce have to do with it? The census information is used by business to determine where they're going to put factories, where to go and do things, okay? That's number one. You have Trump telling people, the minority, or the illegals, listen, we want to scare you so you don't come and you run away, because therefore he doesn't have to spend the money on cities that does have the immigrant issue going on. Now, as a city council member, what I would do is I would start doing PAs, public announcements, number one. Get all the information out, Hispanic radios, Hispanic television. Number one, talk to the Hispanic Bar Association, get attorneys out there that are willing to handle issues if your privacy is infringed upon or if information is given out illegally or obtained, action can be taken. Now, the Census Bureau does have very strong rules and laws in regards to that information being dispersed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Also on the ballot this year is the Metro referendum to expand and extend city transit services. It's light rail, BRT, bus, HOV, sidewalks, bus shelters, lots of things going on in there. I would like your assessment of the Metro referendum and what you think the top priorities should be once, assuming it is passed. So we'll start with Rafael.
So as far as the Metro Next, as far as expanding the rail, I know they're trying to expand it over to a Hobby Airport, but I think what they need to look further is into areas that truly need this type of transportation, public transportation. They're looking for a $3 billion bond, and I want to make sure that if they do get that, they're researching and they're figuring out the areas that need it the most. Not just a particular destination, just like the airport, where it's just people go once in a while or travelers that come into the city, but to use this money for people who actually use public transit. And I haven't researched it that much just yet. I just know that they are they want to add 16 more miles of the rail itself. I just want to make sure that they're putting it in areas that really need it, maybe in these lower income neighborhoods who don't have vehicles, that then go out to these other neighborhoods where they do work or where they go to work. So,
okay. Sandra.
So District J has the highest transit ridership in the city of Houston. Some of the things that I've been advocating for at City Hall and at the Metro Board meeting was the community connector for Gulfton. Gulfton has the highest transit ridership. So this is a way to introduce our community to the transit system, especially in our district, which we have a lot of newcomers. So this connector will go around the community to key locations, schools, apartment complexes, grocery stores, health clinics. The other would be the bus rapid transit, which will acts like a rail and will connect to key areas. We also need to make sure that in the plan, make sure that in our council, in the district and in the city, that we look at first mile and last mile to make sure that we are working along and utilizing the master bike plan so that all complements each other, looking at safer streets, making sure that all the other strategies that we're working on as a city, that is not just the Metro Next plan, but looking at sidewalks, looking at bike lanes, safeways.
Thank you. Drew.
Our public transportation has been a problem. We don't, in Houston, have decided to allow this public become private, I should say. And as a result, they have governmental immunity should they engage in any accidents, which is an interesting accident because part of governmental immunity means that they are doing something that nobody else can, which is not true. That's a basic for governmental immunity. So we need to go ahead and also determine how honest are we going to be? I mean, this is not the first time Houston ever had a rail system. It was back a long time ago. Oil companies said, let's give us a bus. We'll give you free buses. They tore it up. Lino Castillo, when he wanted to use the rail system between Houston and Katy, that was one of the things he ran on. People just don't understand it. They really want to go ahead. And we didn't have to pay for anything. They would have had it directly all the way downtown. And we wouldn't have to build anything. It's just money savings. So we really have to look at what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Freddie.
I fully support Metro Next for the simple reason it's going to provide 250 more union jobs in this city. And my platform has always been working families from the beginning. We all know that. And not to mention that if most of us who live in the city, if you live in Houston, you know traffic in the city is terrible. It's awful. A lot of times during rush hour, it takes us to get 5 miles. It takes 45 minutes, which is unacceptable. So if Metro Next will in turn alleviate a lot of the traffic concerns we have in the city. So I fully support Metro Next. Thank you.
Nelvin.
Yeah, first and foremost, it's very open that I do support Metro Next. But you know another reason why I'm supporting it? Because one of the reasons why people and talents in Houston are leaving after they graduate in high school and college is because of the means of transportation and public transportation in Houston. We can't afford that. We are teaching and graduating people here and they leave. We cannot keep talents. And transportation is a key element Because I have spoken to students in colleges, and what they all tell me, they go to work for 15 minutes ride. It takes them an hour from home to work. It's not acceptable. We are the third largest city in this country, right? So we have to also make sure that part of the budget when we do this is that it can go to bikes, pedestrian, micromobility, infrastructure planning. We have to make sure that we prioritize and build a multimodal infrastructure in Houston. And that I would support completely. Thank you.
Thank you. In 2015, the city passed an equal rights ordinance, which unfortunately was subsequently overturned in a vote later that year. I'm going to make the assumption that everyone up here supports passing another equal rights ordinance. So my question to you is, how should we go about doing it in a way that will hopefully ensure that it sticks this time and doesn't get gets passed and stays passed? So, Freddie.
Whoa, that came back quick. I support any discrimination ordinance that protects all classes. And I think that the biggest thing last time when the ordinance was brought up, it should have passed. I wish it would have passed. And I'm for everyone, all rights, and they're equal in this city. And honestly, I think we have to work together as a city council. Who's ever elected, whether it be Nelvin, whether it be Ed, whether it be Sandra, whether it be Mr. Galvan, whether it be you, Mr. Drew, we have to ensure that we work with our other city council members to ensure it gets passed next time. Thank you.
Okay, Nelvin.
I am a gay man, I'm a brown man, and I'm an immigrant. I've been discriminated, bullied, and called names front ways, back ways, and sideways. So I will fight for any ordinances that will talk about rights for men, for women, for children, for labor unions, every rights that you can imagine. Because at the end of the day, we are all one America, and we need to work as one American and as an American. So equal protection under the law should be executed and implemented from the best and knowledge of every elected officials. And I will advocate and fight for it till I die. Thank you.
Okay.
Our city always prides itself of our diversity, cultural ethnicity, and just who we are. And so we need to stick together, and like some of them have mentioned, we need to build alliances at City Hall with our fellow council members, whoever is elected. And we need to push to make sure that our community really understands what the ordinance means, the messaging. We need to make sure that as people go out to vote and during town hall meetings as a council member, during any type of communication that the council member has, to make sure that the language is clear and concise. I think that was the problem last time, and we need to work on that this time.
Rafael.
I am absolutely in support of an equal rights ordinance. Being the fourth largest city in the nation, it's a disappointment that we don't have one. As Sandra just mentioned, we pride ourselves on being culturally diverse, and yet when something like this comes up for vote, it doesn't go through. Last time it didn't go through, as you all may know, it went through as the bathroom bill, and it just caused a lot of controversy. My parents have always taught me to always treat everybody with respect, no matter where they come from, no matter how they look, but you treat everybody with respect. And at this point, like I mentioned, it's disappointing that we don't have one already. I will push with the rest of the council members to get this on the agenda, make sure it gets done, and to have everybody feel that they can go anywhere and be anywhere and that they will be treated with respect.
Okay, Drew.
The reason why HERO, which is like Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, failed was simply because the side that wanted to frame the question did. They had a man going into the bathroom, scaring women, saying, hey, he's going to use the bathroom in there. You're going to go in there afterwards? So they got to frame the question. That scared the hell out of everybody. What do we need to do to change that? It's going to have to be a little while, perhaps maybe get some transgender people who come in and say that. I remember at the last Democratic function down at TSU, I was ready to go to the bathroom, the women's bathroom. There was a guy standing in front of it, and these two Hispanic women, real short ones, were kind of like, "What do we do? What do we do?" And I looked at him and I said, "Mira, está cambiando." Listen, he's changing. And so they went, "Oh, you know, like Jeffy Raphael, they said on TV that we're okay with that." So people have to be comfortable with the idea of a person who's going to go through a sex change, and he's not in there to lift the toilet seat, scare women in there while he's in there, or do anything like that. So again, you have to frame the question. We do it right, it'll pass.
Okay. A significant number of people in Houston live in apartments. A number of apartment complexes are problematic in that they are not well maintained by their owners. Sometimes they're dangerous. You know, apartments, like any other residence in town, are regulated by the city. So what can and should the city be doing? What will you advocate for as a council member to ensure that our apartments are as safe and up to code as possible? We'll start with Drew.
Well, if you ever been down to the code department down in the city of Houston, you can read one thing and you can find another code that says the opposite. And it's rather confusing. So as far as enforcement goes, it's rather difficult. I mean, I remember the apartment complexes off of 610 and Kirby years ago where all these drug addicts were hanging out. Well, they tore the places down. And where did they come to? Southwest Houston. Used to go down to the 7-Eleven or whatever it is, Kmart, and they'd be hanging outside, "Hey, give me some money," you know, all glazed over, you know, doing their crack or whatever they're doing. So as far as apartment complexes go, you look at the management. If the management is doing something that the owners don't want to do, well, then you get to change the management. If you change the management, this thing continues, then it's the owners. They're slumlords. And what you need to do is really just put the squeeze on. I can give you stories after story after story about apartment complexes and how abusive they can be. I had a friend that had a sewage backup, and the management was blaming them for it and made them clean it up. Instead of having the owners come in and clean it up for them or put them in another apartment. I'm sorry, I got to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Rafael.
I think, again, as I mentioned to you before, one of the biggest things that I'm running on is accountability. And if voted councilman, there's already certain apartment complexes that I know that are not taking care of their renters. And it's time that they pay that price to either fix those apartments or sell the property and get out and let somebody else who will take care of them. People have standards of living. Everybody wants to make sure they have the basic necessities under their roof. Have a working toilet, a shower, not having mold coming out of your ceiling because water's dripping from the apartment on top. And as I mentioned, I will get units out there to investigate these apartments and hold them accountable. And as I said, I mean, either they fix it or they sell it and let somebody else take care of it.
Thank you. Sandra.
First, I want to work on educating our community on their rights, tenant rights. A lot of our community members do not report the conditions of their housing units. Two, I want to work on encouraging apartment owners and property owners to sign up for the Blue Star program. So that impacts the crime, that impacts the way that the property complex is maintained. Three, I want to be able to target the high crime properties and work with our DRT officers with the Houston Police Department. That's a differential response team where they go and inspect the properties and find them for not keeping up in compliance with the multifamily housing. Another, I will evaluate the budget to see how we can allocate more funding for neighborhood protection inspectors. So Public Works has a group that inspects the multifamily housing facilities, but we are very understaffed. So I want to look at the budget and see how we can allocate some funding for that, because we are 80% renters in our district, so that is a high need. Thank you.
Nelvin.
Sorry about this. Okay, just for information, our family owns a lot of apartment complex in this district. My husband is here. He's actually managing a lot of properties in apartment complex. That's one. And I always tell my dad, the biggest challenge that I have, and we are the only candidate that has gone to so many apartment complexes, having barbecues to empower the people so they can register to vote. Because that's the main thing. You have to empower these people and let them know their rights. Because a lot of them, they don't understand exactly what they signed for. So what we've been doing, you know, when the fire happened in Bissonnette, we moved some of these people that got victims of fire to this new apartment. And then they called me in and they said they don't have smoke alarm. They don't have any fire alarm. So you know what we did? We called 911. We helped these people actually to make sure that they have the voice so they can call in and complain. And that's what we did. So it's about empowering them to make sure that they know what they need to do when they experience this type of behavior from landlords. Thank you.
Thank you. Freddie?
Well, actually, this is actually something I'm extremely passionate about. Felt my campaign is that the code enforcement in these apartments is terrible. You know, a lot of people in these communities in District J live in their apartments are basically, they live like third world countries. They have buckets of water outside. They have extension cords going from apartment to apartment. This shouldn't happen in America, especially in Houston, Texas. Another thing too is that there's a constant exploitation of people who live in apartments because they do not pay by a check or a credit card. They pay by money order or cash. So in other words, that actually could stop them from filing any kind of claim with the city because there's no track of the record. And people don't talk about that. I could tell my own story where I had black mold in my apartment and they did not help me because they thought I was an undocumented citizen because my government name is Federico and my English name is Freddie. So when I went into the office, I told them, look, I have black mold in my ceiling. And when they figured out I was an American citizen, everybody came out to help me and it should not happen that. And as soon as I'm elected, I'm gonna hold everyone accountable, just like Rafael said. Thank you.
All right. This is a short answer question. 2018, Proposition B, the so-called firefighters pay parity referendum. How did you vote on Proposition B? Nelvin?
I voted yes for it.
Freddie?
I support all firefighters.
Is that a yes then?
Yes.
Okay. Rafael?
I voted yes.
Drew?
I didn't think we were to get this personal about our voting habits. Yes.
And Sandra?
I voted against. As a municipal employee, I see the impacts that it has on the city and city services.
Okay. Mayor Turner is on the ballot running for his second term. How would you assess Mayor Turner as in his first term of office? And what would you tell him should be his top priority should he win again? Freddie?
I would say the first thing he needs to do is go have a conversation with the firefighters and go back to the negotiating table with them immediately. And any lawsuits they got going on, stop them immediately. Because you cannot allow anyone to attack collective bargaining rights on any level. And that's what we're seeing with this lawsuit. And if I'm Mayor Turner, if you're watching this, I ask that you go back to the negotiating table with the firefighters, sit down with Marty and them, and have the discussion.
Okay. Rafael?
I think absolutely what Freddie just said. He needs to go back, talk to the Houston Professional Firefighters Union and make sure that something gets done. It's not fair that since their last pay raise, they've only had a 3% increase in their wages, which is just ridiculous. I think the next thing that he needs to do is be transparent. A lot of the things that he's done behind closed doors where we don't get the information that we deserve because we pay taxes, and he needs to come with it.
Drew?
Sorry. Yes. My assessment of the mayor as his tenure is it's a rather complex issue. He's a very complex man. He's done good, and he's done some things behind closed doors, as has been mentioned, and it's plain politics. And I, for one, am a very humane person, and I believe that salaries should be paid to everybody, a living salary. And when you do put yourself online with going into a burning building, saving people, whatnot, you got to go in there as well.
Okay. Thank you. Sandra?
I would tell the mayor to go back to the bargaining table, handle the firefighters' pay raise, the pay parity, make sure they come into an agreement. We can't have this go on any longer. We need to make sure that we take care of our firefighters. Also, I want to talk about complete communities, making sure that we have some type of funding as we go into these neighborhoods and select them as a complete community. So far, we have 10 communities that have been selected, and we need to make sure that there is some type of funding when they come into the neighborhoods.
Thank you. Nelvin.
I would tell them to advocate more on achieving and making sure that homelessness is going to be reduced in the city of Houston, and hopefully affordable housing as well, so we can help a lot of people in the city because we're growing so much.
Okay, thank you. Jill, I still intend for these to be 1 minute answers. I think these
Oh.
are, sorry, there was just the last one. Just the question on the vote was the short answer.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
I wasn't clear about that. My apologies. The District J seat is currently held by Mike Laster. He's so far the first and only person to be council member in District J, but he's now term limited out. How do you assess Mike Laster as a council member, and how would you be like him or not like him if you are elected? Rafael.
I like the man. He's actually my neighbor. He lives 2 streets down from me. So I've gotten opportunities to speak with him. I think as our first councilman, he's done a great job. Just like anybody, it's a few hit and misses on some things. Communicating with him sometimes can be a bit difficult, but the work that he's done for the district is amazing. A lot of like the prostitution sting that they had back in 2018, where they were stopping all the illegal nonsense on 59 and Bissonnette. Right now, with the whole flooding issues, he's in talks to do some great things, even purchasing the property over here by Brays Bayou to create more green space and allow for more water retention. So I feel like he's done a great job. We have some pretty big shoes to fill as him being the first councilman, and as your next councilman, I hope to do a great job for you.
Thank you, Drew.
Well, after such a long period of tenure that Mr. Laster has had, there's been good things and some bad things. He's always been accessible if you call him. Sometimes the staff stonewalls you, but hey, that just goes normal. But overall, Mike has been okay by me. The problems is, that I perceive is that there are issues that councilmen cannot get onto the agenda because the mayor determines the agenda. And I'm sorry to say that it doesn't really matter what councilman or any councilwoman wants to do. Once it gets on the agenda, you really don't have much to say. So I'd like to see a change in that regard. And I wish that Mike had approached that issue and done something before I got there.
Thank you. Sandra?
I think Mike has done a very good job in reaching out to our immigrant communities. I think I would like to see him more in the district, in the working with the organizations, the different organizations, making sure that they know him, connecting with him. I will do that as the next city councilwoman because I already have those relationships in the district. I wanted to see him more addressing more of the multifamily housing. A lot of us have talked about the apartment complexes, the conditions. I think he could have done a little bit more in regards to that.
Thank you. Nelvin?
Mike and I have done so many programs and projects together actually for the district, especially the backpack that we do every year for the past 12 years. His priority for the district is a lot of parks, which actually builds the community together, and he has done a tremendous job. And you've seen so many parks in the district, which is really good because that's how you build community. And I want to expand to that. You know, I want to make sure that community as one for District J will have a place to go, even for the weekend, that they can enjoy lives with their kids, with their family. And I go to the parks and I see that happening. I see all the families coming together. So I think if we can actually make sure that we can continue and build that family, because this is family. I'm Filipino, and doing family is so important. So that's what I've done. And then I really do. I like what he has done for the community. I want to expand, you know, and go forward with all the programs he has done for the city. Thank you.
And Freddie?
I think Mike Laster, he did a great job, actually. He's always been a friend of labor unions throughout his whole tenure. And if elected, I will continue that relationship, and I will continue to fight for 15. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that I think often gets overlooked in city politics is that increasingly in recent years, the legislature has had a heavier and heavier hand on what cities are allowed to do and not allowed to do. In particular, this past session, there were a number of laws passed that limited the city of Houston's self-determination, not just Houston, but for example, the stricter revenue cap, the removal of cable franchise fees, which is going to cost the city several $1 million, and other things. So the city, of course, has lobbyists that advocate for its position in Austin. They do the best they can in the circumstances that they face. My question to you is, what will you do as a city council member to advocate for the city of Houston's needs and don't needs in the legislature? We'll start with Drew.
Well, my concern is about the legislators. Unless we make a change in Austin with regards to Democrats, that's an issue there. They themselves putting a cap on, trying to get it reversed and doing things, that's an issue. But quite frankly, I don't want to depend on the state. I don't like depending on anybody. I think we need to depend on ourselves. The only way we're going to do that is to look at alternative funding, to be able to get the funds that we need to do, and don't have to look at Austin or anybody else or federal government and say, gee, we need to have this money here because we want to do this. We'll have the financial means to be able to do it and do it ourselves. I'm thinking of San Antonio, I'm thinking of Austin. Other cities have been able to do alternative funding, and we need to do the same.
All right, thank you. Sandra.
I would advocate for our city by going to the state, going to Austin, and testifying if needed to make sure that we take care of our city. We don't need the state to come and tell us what we need to do. And I will work with our state representatives and senators to make sure they are aware of the issues and making sure how we feel, along with building alliance with the other council members, because one voice is strong, but together we are stronger.
Thank you. Nelvin?
Part of my platform is, in the RISE platform, is I is for integration. We need to make sure that the business and the community actually work together hand in hand, because that's the only way we're going to be able to survive and grow our economic process, because it's so important for all of us, right? And second, I don't like bullies. I hate bullies. And I think what's happening in the state of Texas, especially what's happening in Titan take over HRSD, I think that for me is bullying. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we as a community itself can support ourselves. And we're doing that. We are a strong city. We are a strong city. So we need to make sure that we do that. So at the end of the day, all of us need to stand up. We are elected officials. If we get elected, we're going to be fighting for our city and what the needs for our district and for the community.
Okay, thank you. Freddie?
Honestly, I think the city of Houston needs to take our own destiny in our hands and lift that revenue cap to get us some more money. Let's be honest. We wouldn't be here today with the firefighters if we would have lifted that revenue cap. We could have worked this deal a long time ago. So if you ask me as far as legislation, yes, we have to work with them. But like you said, Drew, it is a Republican House right now in the Texas House of Representatives. So my theory would be to raise that revenue cap, and then we could fix our own things locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Rafael?
I find it a bit appalling and ironic because the state of Texas doesn't like it when the federal government tells it what to do. So, I feel that at this local level, they should really let us decide what we do as far as how we make our income. And, just as Freddie said, there's a lot of things in this in the city that we need to change, just as our city charter. We need to lift up that revenue cap, and then we also need to look at things like taking away some power from the mayor and putting more power in your councilmen and allowing them to put stuff on the agenda, because one person's thoughts and recommendations cannot speak for the 2.3 million people in the city of Houston. So that's one thing that we also need to look at, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. A couple of you have mentioned, council members being able to put things on the agenda, which, as you know, in a strong mayor city is not something that you have the power to do. And in fact, if you want to have the power to do that, you would have to convince the mayor to put it on the agenda. So, broadly speaking, how will you convince the mayor to put items that you want to see done on the agenda? What will you do to ensure that your priorities are taken up by city council by ensuring that the mayor shares those enough to put them on the agenda? Sandra?
That's a tough one because it is a strong form of mayor government. And so building a good relationship with the mayor to make sure that the needs of the district are addressed. That is a really tough one. Working with them and making sure that, sort of a give and take, if we can work together, compromising on certain things, items on the agenda.
No.
This is politics, right? You can't build politics without alliances. So I will build alliances, especially whoever wins in each of the districts, to make sure that we have a pool of strength within the community itself. Not just me as one person, but 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 city councilmen. Because at the end of the day, the mayor also will need the vote of the city council. So it's a give and take relationship. So we need to make sure that we have those alliances, that to make sure that we, whatever we have for our district, that we can build on to protect, because we're representing the district. So we make sure that everything that needs by the district can be put in on the agenda. And at the same time as well, we need to make sure, and I'm going to advocate for this, that the agenda should not be given to the city council 3 days prior to the voting. We need to understand what's in the agenda. We need to make sure that we have time to understand the agenda first, because they're only giving us, less than a week? Yeah. I mean, so many agendas, how will we have time for that?
Okay. Thank you, Freddie.
Honestly, the first thing we would have to do is we have to put on the ballot to stop this mayor strong system where we can all work together, so that all our items are on the agenda. That's important. When I look at Austin and the way it's structured in their city council system, everyone on city council has a voice, and they can make a decision. And I think that's the way the city of Houston needs to be. That we need to get away from this mayor strong system, because we shouldn't have to, if it's a toxic relationship, we can't work with the mayor, that means we can't get nothing done for our district, and nothing should be like that. We should, next on the ballot, we should push something where we get rid of this mayor strong system, period. Thank you.
Rafael.
Yeah, going back to what I said, we have to take away some of the power from the mayor. It is estimated that our city will grow to 5.5 million people by 2050. I mean, at that kind of growth, one person, as I mentioned before, does not hold all the values that all these people in our community hold. He cannot speak for everybody. And with doing this, I mean, we will allow our districts to get things done, just as Freddie said. Once we're out there, I mean, and we get elected, absolutely, we have to build these alliances. And I mean, it sucks to say it, right? But it's one of those environments where you have to, hey, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. And that's how we get things done, unfortunately. And hopefully, once we can get a chance to put this on the next ballot, we can vote to take some of that power away from the mayor and put more power in your hands.
True.
When we look at how city council works and the mayor does his thing, problem is, as far as the district goes, if there's a problem here, other districts have the same problem. Look at the problem, analyze it, come up with a plan. Show the mayor, hey, if we do it this way, we can save money. And that's the whole idea here, is to be able to provide better service to our constituents. At the same time, we don't have to raise taxes. I sound like a damn Republican here, but that's, truth is, I don't like paying taxes either, but if I want to get services done, I better look at how things are being done. Where's the bottleneck? Is there a problem? Is it a personnel? Is it a conflict here? Whatever the problem is, address it. And I do think that here we have a bureaucracy within the city government itself to have their own little entities and they do things. And I've seen it whether it's Austin or anybody else, the bureaucrats, they don't mind telling lies, little white lies to make themselves feel better or do better. You've got to look at the departments and say, hey, is it functioning properly? How do we save money? And how do we do better? All right.
I have one more question for our candidates, and then I'm going to ask them to tell you why you should vote for them. So thank you all for being here, and we're gonna gently steer this into close. So my last question before asking you to give your pitch to the voters is, we have discussed a number of issues, but there are obviously many more that we could have discussed. What issue? Let me ask you, what two issues, whether we've discussed it or not, are your top 2 priorities for District J if you are elected? Start with Nelvin.
Can I have 4? Okay.
I'm asking you to limit to 2. Everyone has to make choices.
My platform is RISE, Revitalization, Integration, Safety and Security, and Education. So let's go with the top, revitalization. first thing I want to make sure that our mindset has changed. You know, when I moved here in this district, people have been asking, where do you live? I said, I live in the Sharpstown area. I said, oh, there's a lot of crimes there. Why do you live there? I said, well, because I want to live there. That my business is there. So that's the one thing that we need to make sure, that's top of priority, is to make sure that we change the mindset of the people about our district and about our community. That this district is the international community that a lot of people with 6 to 8 languages and should be the place to live, work, and play. That's number one. Integration. We need to make sure that we bring businesses here as well, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to provide the needs and the resources for the people. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to matter what we do for our community and for the people if they don't have any money to use to pay for rent, groceries, cars, and whatever that needs to be done to live. That's why we're here. Opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Freddie.
Well, the two biggest things that I would work on are very passionate to me is the fact that I live in an apartment off of Beachnet and Bissonnet, and I feel that like a lot of apartment owners need to be held accountable because they're exploiting these people who live in their apartments because of their undocumented status. And that goes to my second point is, you asked the second thing I would be the most important thing to me on my agenda once elected. It would be to provide more rights to undocumented citizens and work with them, for they're not afraid to report things. For people like myself, if elected, we're more accessible to them and to build that pathway with them. And those are the two most important things for me, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael.
My two biggest issues would be one, for community economic development, and then second, as I've mentioned a couple times already, is accountability. Not only just for me, but for you as the constituents and the voters, you know. As Nelvin has mentioned quite a bit, if you want to see change, you have to be part of that change. And as your elected officials, we can only do so much. And everything that we do, we will do because you want it to happen. So for me, those will be the biggest thing. The community development for District J, and then holding everybody accountable.
Thank you, Drew.
The two big, two big issues that we are currently facing in the district. Number one, flooding, as we just recently experienced today in certain areas. Where I live, I took a picture and put it on Facebook. It was like a lake there. And the city's trying to drain it, but I haven't seen any construction going on for about a week and a half. I'm going, why haven't they done anything? My thing would be is to get with the city and say, if you're doing system maintenance and so forth, what's the problem? Take care of it, address it. The other issue would be the housing, the homeless that we have to face here in Houston and Southwest Houston, taking care of people. I'm not heartless, and it bothers me immensely when I see a family out there or a mother begging for money to feed her family. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sandra.
My top two issues are public safety and mobility. So public safety, I've talked a lot about that. Improving our relationships with the community through relational policing, making sure that we are out in the community, that law enforcement establishes that relationship, that we create communities of trust and not fear. It ultimately, also, it will affect our housing conditions. So enforcement of our multifamily housing properties, making sure that we enforce city ordinances, make sure they're in compliance. So that's one with public safety. Two, the mobility and infrastructure, addressing safer streets, safer roads, walkable sidewalks, mass transit, making sure that we have accessible streets. The district has 4 of the most dangerous intersections. There was a report that was put out. There's 12 in the entire city. The district has 4, meaning there is a fatality. So yes, that is a priority. Our district is a pedestrian community.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm going to ask candidates to summarize and ask you for their vote. But before I do that, I want to thank all of you for coming out on this rainy evening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Southwest Democrats for organizing this and for inviting me to moderate. And I'd like to thank the candidates for their time and participation. So, with that in mind, please tell the good people here why they should vote for you. Sandra.
First of all, thank you, Charles, and thank you to Southwest Dems for organizing the event. Like I mentioned, I'm a lifelong resident of Southwest Houston. first-generation immigrant. I have a lot of personal experience myself, having lived in an apartment complex for most of my life, having experienced those living conditions, hearing the gunshots, the public safety issues. Everything that I'm running on is everything that I've lived through and that I've worked the last 20 years in the neighborhoods and in Southwest Houston to address. So I bring the experience of living in the community, personal experience, but also the professional experience having worked for the city. I've already have established relationships with city government, with state governments, with nonprofits and agencies and various industries in the district and the city. So I have and feel I am equipped to lead this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew, please.
Yes, quite frankly, I'm running here because I want to do things for the city and for my district here in the community. I've lived here over 30 years. I've seen things go up, and down, and all over the place. Some, when I was working in the industry, insurance industry, I didn't really have the time to address the issues, but since 2002, at this point forward, when I see things going on, I address them. I don't care where it is, whether it's the federal level, the county, or the state, or even here at the city of Houston itself. I don't mind going before council and expressing my opinions and providing documentation and evidence to them as to why changes are needed. And as a council member here, I will work here for the district as well as the city of Houston and the various districts that work together, because what affects District J affects other districts as well. So we need to work together in that regard.
Thank you. Rafael.
I want to be your next councilman. I truly do. Like I mentioned before, I lived in this district for 29 years, and it's not just the district, but the city as a whole. I mean, I love it. Anywhere from our sports team, if you're a huge Texans fan, Astros fan, we need to work, obviously, on the basic necessities, trash, streets, flooding, and make sure that we have a great standard of living no matter how much you make. We also need to go into city council and fix the bigger issues, putting things that will really matter on the agenda to help make fixing these other issues quicker and more efficient. As I said, I'm running on 3 basic principles, which will be fiscal responsibility, accountability, and then economic community development. And if you give me the opportunity, please vote for me on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Freddie.
The reason I'm running and the reason I'll be your best candidate is because for too long we haven't, real people don't run for real office. And a lot of times that happens. People who want to make real change do not have the resources to run for office, because all of us know up here to run for office you gotta raise a check, you gotta raise money, and it costs a lot of money to raise campaigns or run campaigns. And one thing about me is that I've always been who I am. I'm always going to be who I am. Nelvin, I've always been real with you, and I'm always going to be real. And that's how I am with the citizens who I speak to every day, is that we need change in this city. And the change is real politicians, or real people like myself, who are not cookie-cutter politicians. Because for too long, we've allowed these cookie-cutter politicians to come into office who are going to sell you everything underneath the sun but the truth. That's what it is, okay? Those are the facts. And you allow these people to get voted in, and what do? They turn their backs on you later, just like they turn their backs on multiple labor unions that I support. So that's why you should elect me to run for to be your next representative for City Council District J. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we about to rise. We about to rise.
You all have heard all the candidates here. What are promises here? What are we about, right? But we're all Democrats. Of course, we're going to have all the same policies because we're all Democrats. But in the end, this election is about economics and being inclusive. We need someone that can revive this district as the best place to live, work, and play. I am the candidate that has helped businesses to grow business economic, because I have done that because I'm a business owner myself. I am the candidate that has worked with immigrants and refugees for the past 15 years and has done a lot of community service in this district. I am the candidate that has done and stood to so many immigrants to fight for the immigrants. It doesn't matter if you're documented and undocumented, because I know what I believe in.
My name is Nelvin Adriatico, and I'm running to be your next City Council for District J because we can all make history. I will be, when elected, will be the first gay, Filipino, Asian American be elected in office, and I'm proud of it. So hopefully I will get your vote. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.